Okay, so I've created a method of drawing from imagination that is based on principles that were used by Kim Jong-ji to draw from imagination, but I've formalized it so that it's easy to do step by step so that you can make progress at multiples of speed compared to others. So, what were the principles that Kim Jong-ji used? It's basically the idea of observation. So, when you draw, you most likely have enough hand control to basically make the mark you want. The thing is, you don't know what the mark needs to look like. The main problem with you not knowing how to draw, especially from imagination, is that you don't know what it looks like. So here's a mental exercise that I like to take people through when explaining this to them. Basically, I want you to imagine a muscular man, like shredded muscular, right? And like shirtless or something so you can see the muscles. You can probably imagine that. Decent, right? You have the idea in your head, you get the concept, you see muscles and stuff, right? But now I want you to take that same image, like don't change the image or anything, and I want you to zoom in on it and pretend that you're in Photoshop and you have like a red marker or something, and I want you to basically like trace the muscles. When I do that, I'm good at it, right? I mean, I can draw really cool drawings like this from imagination. Now, this one was from reference, but that was like 2 years ago. So obviously I can do stuff like that from imagination now. Maybe you'll have some pictures on screen of little doodles I did of muscular men from imagination. And the way I'm able to do that is through the method that I've outlined in this video. But you probably can't. Like if I told you to imagine the muscular man, and I want you to trace in your mind his abs, his serratus, his obliques, his lats, and all that, you're not going to do a pretty good job at that. So you need to know what things look like, and you do that by looking at them, is basically what Kim Jong-ji did. And a kind of interesting story about him is that in Korea, you're basically required to join the military for like X amount of time. And he did that, but he didn't want to draw because he knew that if the people in the military knew that he was really good at drawing, they'd always be asking him to draw stuff for them, like their family members and portraits of them and stuff like that. So what he did instead, because he was passionate about art, but he didn't want people to know about it, was that he would always look at the things in this military environment. So he'd look at like the weapons and the bases and all that, and he'd study them a lot. And he'd actually practice drawing in his mind. And from that, he was really able to draw military-like stuff from imagination easily. The problem is that for most people, it seems kind of silly to just look at things and imagine them from their mind. And this wasn't his main method of learning to draw either. But it really showcases how important observation is. So here's the method. I call it the SPTR method, and it's an acronym for study, practice, test, repeat. Now, the first part, hold on, before I go through that, I want to tell you to pick something you want to get good at drawing from imagination. And ideally something you're not good at, something you want to improve. And ideally draw a before picture, like do your best to draw it from imagination. Then we'll have like an after picture where you're finally good at drawing it. But the first step is study. And that's basically where you're going to learn about it. You're going to study it. So if you wanted to learn how to draw like tanks or something, then you would learn about perspective and the shapes of a tank and all the little details so that you know what it actually looks like. Or if we're talking about muscles, which is more of an area of my expertise, I might study like the deltoid, how it has 3 heads and how there's an asymmetry from a side profile and how it has this sort of, what do you call it, like finger connecting thingy to it, right? I don't know all the technical terms, but I know what it looks like, and then therefore I'm able to draw it. So study it. Like you can also study like the functions of things, like the deltoid, it raises the arm, but the rear delt will move it backward more, and the front delt will move it forward more, like forward in front of you and stuff. And then after you've studied it, you're going to do practice, but specifically practice with a reference, and even more specifically, study for practice with a reference. Because oftentimes when people draw with a reference, they're just trying to copy it. So for example, something I really, really hate, and this would suck if you're trying to learn to draw from imagination, is the grid method. That's where you draw a grid across your paper, and then you make a corresponding grid on top of your reference, and then you just try to copy each box, right? That would be a horrible method because it's so passive. It's like, oh, I see this here, now I put it here, right? You don't want to do that. You want to like study as you go. So for example, if you aren't good at figure drawing, then you might want to study the proportions of the figure. So something that I found out on my own that I use all the time, especially for women, I don't know why, it's just more consistent on women. It's where you draw the belly button 2 heads below the chin. So like if this is my head length, then I would go down once and then again, and then I'd be at the belly button. And that's a proportion that I found out. And I feel like this is one of the best ways to learn all your proportions and things rather than somebody telling you, because there's so many things you could use as a proportion. So like, for example, someone might tell you that they like to use the belly button as a reference for where the elbow goes or something, right? But it's like, I don't really care to do that, but other people would, because there are just so many proportions you can use. Like I try to figure out the length between the chin and the collarbone using like the ball of the nose, like the top of it, to the bottom of the chin, and then copy that down. But you probably won't hear that proportion from any other artist because they don't find that proportion as useful as some other random proportion. For example, they always talk about how the head is like 5 eyes wide. I always hate trying to figure out the proportion and placing the eyes like that. It doesn't work for me well. So this is the best way to find out proportions and what things look like. As you look at your reference, you need to study it. And also just study the shapes of things. So far we went over proportion, but study the shape a lot too, like just anything about it. So this really, really helped me when drawing abs. Like I would go on YouTube and look up like these how to draw abs or like muscular torsos tutorials. And I never liked them because they always wanted to like methodize things. It's just, the truth is, you need to know what it looks like and then draw it. It's so simple, but we always like to overcomplicate things. See, like I'm giving you like a formula and stuff, but the formula is really just common sense, as you'll see as we go through it. So we went through study, where you like just learn about it, and then we went to practice from reference, where you study the reference heavily. Now this practice phase, it's not just studying like one reference. You want to go through a bunch of them. But, depending on how quickly you want to go through the cycle, if you want to repeat the cycle a bunch of times or go through the cycle once but really dial in on each section, it depends, right? So you could just do it once with one reference, or you could do like 20, 30, 40, whatever, right? Then the next one, study, practice, is test, right? Test is going to be where you draw the thing but without the reference. So you're going to kind of try to train your memory. There are 2 ways you could go about this. You could like create your own pose. Like if we're going with the figure, you'd be creating your own pose. You could like draw maybe somebody like in this pose or something, but maybe you haven't drawn that from reference, right? You could create your own thing. Or you could try to remember a reference from the past and draw that again. And what you'll find when you're doing this without reference and you're still learning is that there are areas of what you're trying to draw that are blank. You don't fully get it yet. Because, you can't get all of the information down in one go. So that's why it's like a cycle. You're going to go through this study, practice, test, repeat over and over again. That's why I put repeat at the end. So this is technically the last step, but I like to put repeat at the end just so that you have to repeat it. And here's what you do here at test, though. It's not just like testing whatever. Because if you test yourself and you get something wrong, which is completely inevitable, like you don't remember what the serratus looks like or something, then you don't just like stop there. You go back to the reference and figure it out. So like, let's say you are drawing like shredded torsos, and there's a muscle called the serratus. It's like right here, okay? And you don't know what it looks like. And to be honest, it's a weird muscle. So what you do is you're like, oh shoot, I don't remember what it looks like or how it looks or whatever. Then you're going to go find references of it. You might watch another tutorial like where you study it. And then with this new knowledge, you will apply the knowledge. And that way you can fix your drawing. And now you have learned how to draw the serratus. Maybe not like perfectionistly, but you've made some good progress. And what's really special about this is it gives your brain a reason to remember it. So think about this. Let's say I just gave you a 3-hour YouTube video, like extremely long. And it went over all the details, all the proportions and everything about muscles, like how long they are, how short they are, how much space, the shape, the bulginess of it, or like if fat covers it or if it really shows out on the surface, and the function of it. And I went through all the details so that you would be so equipped to be able to draw every muscle from imagination. And then I had you draw right after watching the video. You know it's still not going to be good because your brain hasn't remembered all of that. What's cool about when you test yourself, you don't know something, and then you go get what you need, that part there where you didn't know it gives your brain a reason like, oh shoot, I need to know this. And that's why I love this method. You start off studying things so that you're not completely without a base or a way to start. Because if I just tell you draw the serratus, you're like, what the hell is the serratus, right? But if I tell you to study it and draw it from reference, and then draw it from imagination after studying it and drawing it from reference, now you have a real reason to remember how to draw it. You don't become a slave to your reference and all that. Now, the next step is repeat, but it's not just repeat. It's repeating with feedback. So when you repeat, you want to do it with feedback. And there are two ways you can get feedback. You can either get feedback from other people, like other artists, or it doesn't even have to be an artist necessarily, because I noticed that some people are really good at critiquing art and others are not. So for example, if I draw a picture and I show it to my dad, he's really, really good at telling me, oh, this is too long, you need to work on this, or this is messed up, right? But if I show it to like my brother Luke or my mom, it's like they don't know. It's like, oh, I don't know. It looks like a drawing. It looks pretty good, but something's not quite right. And it's just like never helpful. So if you do know somebody who's good at critiquing your art, you can ask them. Also, one of the best ways is to ask other artists within online art communities. So that's one that I'm actually building right now. So if you click the link in the description, you can join. And what's really cool about it is that right now, when there's so few members, you'll get so much more access to me. Because like if they're just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people in there, I can give each one of them so much attention on how to get better at drawing. But when it becomes like 100 people, 200, 300, I can't give them all so much personalized feedback. So you might want to join right now. So then there's also other free online art communities you could join, but they're always like less quality, worse artist. Usually the guy that set it up, like the pro artist, isn't usually involved. Like there's one that I'm in called the David Finch fan server, which is basically a community or a Discord for artists, but David Finch himself isn't even in there critiquing people. So my community, you get advice straight from me. Now, you can also, the other way, is to get feedback from yourself. Because, yes, it's true that you'll be blind to your own weaknesses in many regards, but you're still pretty good at analyzing what sucks, right? Like, let's say you drew a figure, and you look at it, and you're like, oh, I'm pretty good at drawing chests. Like, oh, I did all the striations nicely, it's the perfect length and all that. You can be like, give yourself a pat on the back for drawing a good chest. But then you go look at the forearm and the hands, and you're like, I'm not very good at that, right? So you can already kind of tell where you need improvement. And then also go deeper than just like, oh, it's messed up, but go deeper, like, why is it messed up? Am I making them too short, or am I adding way too many lines for the muscles, or what, right? That's the process. Congratulations, you've learned it. But the problem now is you got to do it. So, quick recap. First, you're going to study what you're trying to draw. That means watch tutorials on how to draw it, study what it looks like, what it does, stuff like that. So if it's the deltoid, you could learn about the 3 heads and this weird finger thing it does. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but it's weird. And you can learn about what each head does. And you can then learn about like how long it is. Like, for example, if you're drawing like a straight on shot, you're going to think, okay, here's the bottom of the deltoid, like right here, but the bottom of the chest is down here, right? So you want to do that. You don't want the deltoid to be hanging way down here, and you also don't want it to be way too short, like way up here. Then you study with reference. You practice with reference, I mean. So you look at the reference drawing of a guy with some cool deltoids, and then you draw it, right? And then you test yourself without any reference. When you don't remember something or something's not quite right, you can't figure something out, then you get some references or tutorials or something to help you out. You fix it, and then you get some feedback, and then you repeat this whole process over and over and over again. And then congratulations, you are guaranteed to be good at drawing what it is you want to draw. And it sounds like, oh, this is just how you do line work or something. Like, imagine this with shading too, right? You can do this with any area of art. With shading, it's like, it's not what something looks like, it's what the light on top of it looks like. So if you can get feedback and do this whole process about what light looks like on top of things, then same deal. Anyway, that's all. Click the link in the description and join my program. Goodbye.